So what explains this comprehensive strategic partnership, which at one point of time was described as the partnership between the largest and the oldest democracies in the world for greater global good, suddenly going south and going south so rapidly? Is this Donald Trump's frustration for not getting credit that he desperately craves for Pakistan seeking a ceasefire during Operation Sindoor? Is it not being able to browbeat India into submission the cause for this frustration? Or is there merit in some analysts arguing that this is a form of neo-imperialism of the United States of America, and India refuses to buckle under pressure? Let's bring in the finest panel of experts and analysts joining us on this India First special broadcast. I want to begin by introducing S.C. Garg, former Finance and Economic Affairs Secretary, Government of India. In a moment, we will be joined by Raymond Vickery Jr., Senior Associate and Chair of India and Emerging Asian Economies. Professor Brahma Chilani, former advisor to India's National Security Council, one of the finest strategic voices, joining us on this broadcast. Jayant Krishna is non-resident senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. I want to begin by cutting across to India Today's to editor Business Today, Siddharth Zarabi, for the latest developments that are taking place. So Siddharth, once again, Donald Trump has tried to up the ante. He says, oh, India is not listening to me. I will impose even more tariffs on India, even more penalties. What are you picking up? How does Government of India intend to respond?
Absolutely, Gaurav, and this is broken a couple of hours ago. Donald Trump is raising the ante further beyond 25% tariffs plus an unspecified penalty. The US president did a phone with a US television network a couple of hours ago, and he said, and I'm quoting from the reports that have emerged just a little while ago, we settled on 25% for India, but I think I'm going to raise that substantially within the next 24 hours. So that's the headline news at this stage. Donald Trump is now raising the ante beyond what he said, 25% plus penalty. He is now threatening that 25% is going to be higher, and that too within the next 24 hours.
Okay.
There is no clarity on what that penalty would be. Is he going to combine it? But very clearly, Donald Trump raising the ante as far as this unreasonable, unjustified pressure, according to the Government of India and by all reasonable analysis, that the United States is trying to put on us.
Now, Mr. Garg, what's your assessment of Trump's constant pressure on India? That India is purchasing Russia oil, India is fueling that war machine, and India's very calm response showing a mirror not just to the US but also US and the European Union, sir.
So very clearly, Trump has not been able to get from India what he wanted on any of those four key pillars, whether the tariff at which they will export to India, the goods they will export to India, the tariff they want to impose on Indian goods coming to the United States, purchases across the defense, aircrafts and energy and many other things, and the investments into the United States, which all the 4 or 5 guys who have done deal with Trump have conceded. So he was not able to get any one of them. So obviously he's quite frustrated about India not sort of falling into his trap or succumbing to his pressure. Now he has come up with this new element of the Russian oil. You see the way Trump's sort of position changes. 2 months back, you saw him humiliating the Ukraine president there because
Yes.
Ukraine was not conceding critical minerals and other things to him. The moment it was done, he has changed the tune. He has become enemy of Russia. He has accepted Ukraine's interest to be served. So he is not only transactional, but he is a man who works on the moment. The spur of the moment is what works. I don't think Indian side is used to dealing with this kind of mercurial, temperamental kind of person. And we, by the way, have also a weakness, unlike China, who has strength in certain things and can sort of
leverage it,
turn off certain things to United States. So Trump would listen to someone who either sucks up to him or who has something of a lever to take against him. Both of
Okay.
us we don't have. That is
No, but
why
then there are those who say that if you stare the bully down, Trump actually chickens out. It's said in the United States that you just need to stare him down. He will ultimately chicken out. But let me bring in Professor Brahmachalani. Is that only China specific? Because Professor Chalani, both India and the United States have invested so heavily in this relationship. They've invested quarter of a century since the Pokhran tests of 1998, the sanctions, whether it's the Vajpayee government or the Dr. Manmohan Singh government, whether it's then President Clinton or George Bush or Barack Obama, Narendra Modi, Joe Biden, Narendra Modi, Donald Trump first tenure, Narendra Modi, and from next step in strategic partnership to India being pivot to Asia. Is Trump throwing away that relationship carefully nurtured for over 25 years, sir?
It's a good question. But India handled Trump well in his first term when Trump slapped tariffs on India. He slapped 25% tariffs on steel and 10% on aluminum. Then he revoked India's GSP status, affecting $5.6 billion worth of Indian exports. So what did India do? India retaliated. India retaliated by raising tariffs on US goods, from chickpeas and lentils to diagnostic reagents and metal compounds. India then diversified suppliers, for example, sourcing apples from Iran and walnuts from Chile. The Indian retaliation had a sobering effect on Washington, and US exporters lobbied for tariff relief. That helped catalyze trade negotiations and eventual tariff rollback by both sides. The Indian counter-tariffs were lifted only in September 2023, just ahead of the G20 summit in New Delhi, as part of a broader US-India trade resolution. It is now time for India to again re-embrace that earlier strategy, impose counter tariffs. Because if you deal with a bull in a china shop, you can't play nice with the bull. You have to be both tactful as well as punitive. You have to impose countermeasures. India must strategically target US exports that are both economically significant and politically sensitive to exert pressure on Trump's hardline tariff stance. He will come under pressure. He will come under pressure as he did in the first term.
Okay. But does India have that kind of leverage? Because Mr. Garg seems to argue that China had that leverage with, rare earth minerals. India does not seem to have that kind of leverage. But Ambassador Sajjanhar, your appreciation. India appears to be standing very firm, refusing to buckle under pressure. Now, will this lead to what some of the American analysts argue is Trump's taco diplomacy, that Trump always chickens out? You need to stare the bully down. Professor Chilani says that's exactly what India needs to do.
Well, thank you very much, Gaurav, for having me on the show. To my memory, what India did in Trump 1.0 was threaten that we are going to impose these tariffs on America, whether it was against GSP, whether it was against steel, aluminum, etc. We never ultimately implemented those tariffs. The threats remained. We kept on postponing. 6 months later, we are going to do it. So, we had that on the drawing board, but we never really went ahead with it. That is my recollection. The other thing is that as far as tariffs are concerned, the negotiations are going on. We are expecting a US team to come to India at the end of August. Let us continue with the negotiations. In any case, there are a large number of other areas where we are collaborating with the United States. I think that relationship is a strong relationship. And we've seen what happened, in February when Prime Minister Modi had gone, whether it is in the area of technology, whether it is in the area of defense, it is in the area of, critical emerging technologies, on geopolitics, etc. So I think that relationship we need to continue in terms of, taking it forward. The last point, Gaurav, that I want to make here is, as far as Russian issue is concerned, it was never really an issue between the two countries. Now, what
Absolutely.
has really pushed back against Trump is that he wants to see an end to the Russia-China war. He's eyeing the
Russia-Ukraine war.
Nobel Peace Prize. And that is
Yes.
what he says, that I will increase the tariffs, and hopefully that will have a salutary impact upon Russia in terms of withdrawing as far as or coming to the negotiating table
No,
as
that
far
would
as
actually indicate very poor appreciation and understanding of the
indeed, I
situation.
agree with you.
Because
I
Jayant Krishna, okay, so you want to complete your point before I bring in Jayant Krishna? Ambassador
No,
Sajjan had 30 seconds.
yes, I wanted to agree with you, Gaurav, that I think India's past track record should really bring it home to Trump that India is not going to wilt under pressure. India is going to stand
Yes.
firm. India is also a democracy, and India's capabilities and capacity, financial and otherwise, are much greater than they were in the past when we were able to stand up against the United States in a very firm manner. Gaurav.
I'll come to that 1971 and that Nixon-Kissinger era and the Seventh Fleet coming into the Indian Ocean region in just about a moment. But Jayant Krishna, this is clearly much more than just about a trade deal. There are some analysts who've argued that this is some kind of neo-imperialism. The US does not want an honorable trade deal. It wants to beat countries into submission, including its allies, including a comprehensive strategic partner like India.
Yes, Gaurav. So it's not just surprising, it is very shocking. President Trump is on record having said that we are almost there when it comes to US-India trade deal. The diplomats on both sides have been saying so. And when things were about to be signed, suddenly 2 days before the deadline, he announced this 25% tariff and plus penalty since we buy crude oil as well as defense equipment from Russia. So it's very, very unfortunate. But the point is, we as Indians, we don't have that kind of leverage which China has. China can keep pushing US to a larger extent. But the fact is, we are the second largest trading partner. US is the second largest trading partner to India. And as we all know, our trade deficit is in favor of India. We have a trade surplus actually. And not only that, US is the largest FDI investor in India, right? So our leeway is less. But I think some of the data which has been coming is very, very interesting, Gaurav. This entire, allegation that we are a tariff king and so on and so forth. To what extent it's true? On some products, agriculture products, dairy products, I do understand we have high tariff because we have to protect the interest of our farmers and dairy entrepreneurs. But if you look at all the weighted average tariff for all products in proportion of what the US exports to India is just about 4.6%. And a lot of products like machinery, like pharmaceuticals, like coal, oil, the products, they have very, very low duty. And
No, but
almost
that is
45.
conversation that takes place between friends and comprehensive partners. You discuss these things. The kind of language that Donald Trump is using is clearly indicating that there are other games at play. I have Raymond Vickery Jr. also joining me on the broadcast. Sir, welcome. Your appreciation. Now, Donald Trump appears unwilling to take on China, which in 2024 imported almost $63 billion worth, $62.6 billion worth of Russian oil. China is the largest buyer of Russian oil and not India. So he doesn't want to take on China. He wants to target India. Why is he doing this in your appreciation, sir?
Well, thanks very much for having me. In my view, this tariff approach overall, this fortress America economically, that we can go it alone and we don't need to have trade relations, it'll all happen here in the United States, is exactly the wrong approach. President Trump thinks he's going to make some great deal. He has a view of himself as one of the great men of history, and that he can get together with Xi and solve these problems. It's a real estate developer's approach to international relations. It's exactly the wrong approach. I do not think he appreciates the necessity for siding with one of the great democracies in the world, India, as opposed to an authoritarian regime. He just thinks of it in a real estate developer's mindset that he can make a deal and that he will then ride off into the sunset with another triumph. Hopefully, what's going to happen here is that there are going to be saner heads that are going to prevail on both sides. That even within the Trump administration, Rubio and others who understand the importance of the U.S.-India relationship, and on the Indian side, that it will not become even more exacerbated for domestic political purposes and resort to the old-time religion, if you will, of estrangement from the West, and we can go it alone, and we don't need anybody else. That's not reality. India is not in the situation that it was in right after independence, where it needed protection, where it had to plot a third way in order to show independence. India is now proud and strong. It can make its own decisions, but it needs to make those decisions dispassionately and without the fault lines which have been in Indian politics for a long time.
India has been doing that all along. If you notice, India has been very level-headed here, despite the grave provocations that come from Donald Trump. And stay with me for a moment, Shah, as I bring in Siddharth Zarabi once again, because there are analysts in the United States who've argued, and in writing, that whatever Donald Trump is doing is counterproductive. It's not helping the Americans. Additional tariffs, unless, of course, countries that are exporting to the United States agree to reduce their prices or their margins, which so far there is no indication that it's happening, Siddharth. This clearly means that the Americans will have to pay more, and it's not about the economy, is it? It's only about my way or highway. Is that Donald Trump's approach?
Well, we really don't know what his approach is. And I want to add another fact. We started the show by saying that he's threatening to take 25% to God knows what level through his peculiar maths. He's also said that eventually tariffs on pharma products will go up to 250%. Now, India, remember, is the supplier of low-cost, affordable, generic medicines all over the world, and there are pharma exports separately to the United States. So it's very clear that one of the most obese nations in the world will get further hit by Trump's peculiar way of doing maths. But in response to your larger question, and I just want to bring in this element, Gaurav, because I get this sense that there is almost a public outcry that we should respond in kind to Trumpisms. I would disagree with that. Past history of dealing with an overbearing America, including during the period of sanctions after Pokhran, teaches us that this is the moment to look inward. It is the moment to fix what is perhaps needing some more impetus, more reforms looking
within.
at PLI for our export sectors, diversifying our export basket. And that's why, Gaurav, very important point, there is some criticism of some clauses in the India-UK trade deal. But if you take a look at the bigger picture, we have been willing to sacrifice a bit because we know that you cannot now, as of today, along with the rest of the Committee of Nations, trust the United States as a durable, reliable trading partner. I think the biggest message today is the United States is no longer globally at all a reliable trading partner. It was never a reliable security partner, as many countries have realized, but it's no longer a reliable trading nation partner as well.
You know, I'll come back to the economics of it, but since you've raised the issue of security and strategy, I want to bring in Professor Chilani. Professor Chilani, Pokhran 1998 nuclear tests, and then there were sanctions on India. Our entire Sea King and Sea Harrier fleet, our naval fighter jets and naval helicopters, they were grounded. There was cannibalization of parts, and there was a lot of suspicion. And you know better than anybody else how the light combat aircraft suffered in the absence of the GE 404 engines. Your appreciation, especially after what Donald Trump is doing, is the United States a reliable strategic partner when it comes to military hardware? or is there merit? Look, you have the national security advisor, in Russia. You have the external affairs minister and the defense minister who would be heading there. Russian President Vladimir Putin would be coming to India. Where are India's interests better protected?
You raise an important question, Gaurav. For more than 30 years after the 1971 birth of Bangladesh in a bloody war of liberation, the US imposed sanctions on India. And in that same period of 3 decades, the US aided the rise of China, creating an expansionist monster on India's northern borders. And in the same period, the US kept arming Pakistan, trying to make it as a military counterweight to India. After 3 decades, the US-India relationship finally began to take off when President Clinton came to India in the year 2000. So successive governments for 25 years in Washington have invested in building a stronger relationship with India. Now Trump is threatening to sink that vital relationship. Operation Sindoor clearly revealed that the US is not a trustworthy strategic partner. And now Trump's scorched earth tariff policies are exposing the US as not a reliable economic partner. But it's important to note one development that often gets obscured. In April, soon after the Pahalgam massacre of civilians, Pakistan invested in the Trump family controlled World Liberty Financial, the crypto firm. Pakistan made a major investment in that crypto company, and Trump's attitude towards Pakistan changed. There was a sea change in Pakistan, in Trump's attitude towards Pakistan. And in the same period since then, the US-India relationship has taken a turn for the worse. So something is going on, which you cannot explain rationally. It appears that even the personal gain element is influencing Trump's foreign policy approach. And today, his focus on Russian oil is also very interesting because it reflects his frustration with Putin for not accepting a ceasefire at a time when the West is staring at a possible defeat in the Ukraine war. The last thing Trump wants is a Western defeat in the Ukraine war on his watch. That would tarnish his legacy. So Trump is becoming increasingly desperate, given that there'll be a Russian summer offensive in Ukraine, and the fear in Washington is that this year could be pivotal in the Ukraine war. So in order to now exert pressure on Moscow, he's trying to reduce Russia's oil export revenue, and he's picked on the easier target, not on China, but the easier target being India. But he's mistaken. Yep. India will not succumb to his coercion.
And that is something that perhaps Trump has seen already, but is this a game of brinkmanship? He's seeing who will blink first. Mr. Garg, former Foreign Secretary Sham Saran, he's clearly of the view that Donald Trump, one, he's turning out to be a nightmare for India, but he's warned against surrendering to Trump's exaggerated demands. He believes India should stand firm, like China and like Brazil. Just stand firm and Trump will chicken out.
See, we have no option other than standing firm. That is very clear. See, until two things happen, it will not be in the interest of India, the problem will not be solved. One, we must make the distinction between Trump and the United States. I don't think we should be talking against United States while we are miffed with Trump. That distinction we must maintain. Whatever is happening at this point of time is because of Trump, not because of the United States. That distinction. Second thing, someday the rest of the world, including India, has to call out this bluff of tariffs. There is
Yes.
no real sting in tariff until the rest of the world starts competing with itself and starts surrendering. If the remaining countries just decide that whatever tariff you impose, we will not reduce our price by even $1.
Yes.
Let your tariffs create problems for yourself in your domestic constituency. If you want to buy rest of the world's good, pay the taxes, let your people pay the taxes. By the way, I don't know why we don't realize the United States cannot do without importing. It's not that's a matter of choice for the United States to import and keep the rest of the world happy. It is to meet the US domestic uh,
Yes.
investment as well as consumption requirement. And therefore, if you cut the plug and stop exporting except at the price at which we have been doing, I think United States, or not United States, Trump will fall in line.
Yeah.
Remember one thing when he was trying to act very funnily with Canada and others. Canada is much weaker than China, but
Yes.
Canadians and others started sort of turning the tap off on the debt side. There was
Yes.
sell off in the debt, and the Trump sort of succumbed and stopped. So I think let us not play into his hand by doing what Japan and others have done. In
Oh,
fact, we should
absolutely.
work
Because
with
that is why
them.
they say that
Not
Trump always chickens out. You just need to stare him
no,
down.
no. I
You
think
need to
no.
stay the
This
course.
Gaurav, I think this is a mistake.
Okay?
He was chickening out, but right now he's not chickening out. He's actually winning. The way he has got the deal with so many countries, despite it's being completely unfair, is that he's not chickening out. The rest of the world is chickening out.
No,
I don't think we
so
should be mistaken about that.
no, sure. But the countries that do stand firm, take Brazil, for example, American coffee, the prices will shoot up the moment Brazil decides, like they did, that
Correct.
they will not reduce prices. So
Absolutely.
Americans will have to pay more for their cup of coffee every morning,
Absolutely.
and
That is
that's
the
going to
approach.
hurt. That's going to hurt. But, Jayant Krishna, former US ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, and we just played out what he said. While he was US ambassador to India, he said, we bought, as in India bought Russian oil because Americans wanted somebody to buy Russian oil at a price cap. It was not a violation of anything. It was actually the design of the policy, because as a commodity, Americans did not want oil prices to go up, and India fulfilled that. Is no one telling Donald Trump what the ground realities are, or he knows it, and yet he's using Russian oil as a reason to make India look bad in the eyes of public at large, who may not have an eye for detail?
See, Gaurav, President Trump's behavior, unfortunately, depends on which side of the bed he gets up from. It changes every day. You're right. I mean, when, much before the Ukraine war started, when India started buying, crude oil from Russia, US is on record to have praised that India's intervention and commencement of large-scale buying of Russian oil has actually stabilized the global oil market. And a very, very good equilibrium of demand and supply. They've gone on record. So I think, and the fact is, today India buys from Russia not because it loves Russia. The fact is,
Yes.
nobody else supplies crude oil at such a low price as Russia does to India, right? And suppose India stops buying, would the US or any other country start giving oil to India at the same price at which we get from Russia? Or we should pass on the buy more expensive crude oil, refine it, and then sell it to our domestic consumers at a much premium and at a higher price. Why should Indian consumers pay the price? Or
Okay.
else, I mean, it's very,
His
very
point is, of course,
ridiculous, or
companies in
if
India
government
are
absorbs it.
profiting from it. Companies in India are profiting from it because they buy discounted oil and then sell it at a higher rate after refining it to the European Union, to the US, to other countries in the world. But, Raymond Vickery Jr., the last 30 seconds I have on this part of the show, look at the ground realities. European Union's LNG imports from Russia reached a record 16.5 million tons. Its total trade in goods with Russia, 67.5 billion euros. Services worth 17.2 billion euros in 2023. All of this far exceeds India's total trade with Moscow. US continues to buy uranium hexafluoride for its nuclear industry. It continues to buy from Russia. Why this hypocrisy? Why these double standards?
Well, this is vintage Trump. He thrives on chaos. He creates a problem. Then he solves the problem or ameliorates it and claims victory and claims that he's done something. This is not a tactic which is just limited to the US-India relationship. It's his tactic in attacking democracy in the United States. He's attacking the courts. He's attacking those who do labor statistics. This is the way in which the man has operated and is continuing to operate. But what has to happen, in my judgment, is on both sides, there has to be a looking beyond President Trump to what the verities are and the real importance of the US-India relationship, to not let this chaotic approach destroy the progress we've made in the last 30 years of bringing together these two greatest democracies in the world.
Oh, absolutely. So wait out the Trump tenure. The last bit I have on the show before I go to the devastation and Devbhoomi story, Ambassador Sajanhar, is Donald Trump actually pushing India closer to Russia? Is the writing on the wall that the US may not, or Trump may not be a reliable partner unless his administration, drums some sense into him?
Yeah, Gaurav, I think whatever Trump might wish to do, but India will need to follow its own policy, its own national interest. And I think under those circumstances, we need to differentiate between what Mr. Trump is doing and what our potential of the India-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership is. And that potential is huge. And that is what I said, we need to continue to work on that while dealing with Mr. Trump. This is his second term. He's going to be there for 3 years plus. He's going to go away with that. I think what we have built with the United States over the last 25 years, we need to take it forward. As far as tariffs are concerned, I'm sure one way or the other, negotiations should continue. But in addition to that, Gaurav, we have signed an FTA with the United Kingdom, a good FTA.
Yes.
There might be some criticism, but we are on the verge of signing an FTA with the European Union. With GCC, we are working. With Mercosur, we are working. We have signed with Australia. We've signed with the UAE. So I think we need to take action on that, diversify. As far as Russia is concerned, I think, comparisons are odious, but our relationship with the United States is much more substantive, much deeper, much more comprehensive than what we have with Russia. Russia also,
I will let that be the last word on
defense.
this part of the show, sir. I've run out of time, but over the next several days and weeks, we will continue to track the story very closely as India diversifies and remains engaged with the United States of America. To all my guests, many thanks for joining me.